Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. Alongside me is Billy Brant and Colin Camper, and this is our end of the year award show for 2015. We're bringing back the same categories that we did last year. Some of the categories include, of course, Fight of the Year, Fighter of the Year, Event of the Year, Submission and Knockout of the Year. We also have kind of a couple of special categories. We have our Rising Star category, which is kind of someone who's new to the sport of MMA, who's kind of taken the world by storm. We also have Most Improved and, of course, Female Fighter of the Year to round out our 8 categories for this year. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. My normal co-host here, Billy Brant. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrant21. And our Facebook correspondent, Colin Camper, joining us once again to complete this year's show. And if you're wondering when you're listening to the show, if you want to see a complete list, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BeyondTheCagePodcast. Like the page, obviously. And you'll see our list there in the notes section. It's labeled 2015 Beyond the Cage MMA Awards. If you do want to see a complete list, I provided a link down below in the description, just in case you were wondering. And also, before we get to any picks, Colin's going to hold up a couple of photos here. If we get to 450 Facebook likes, I think we're at 419 right now, so that would be about 31 more likes. We will start another Facebook contest. And if so, we're going to give away some great prizes here for being at end of the year. We got some great autographs and some more to give away that I'm not showing to keep some mystery here. But we got a couple here. What do we got? That's Tim Elliott, former UFC fighter, current Titan FC flyweight champion. Got some autograph photos from him. I believe on the flip side, we have... Oh, that's another picture of Tim Elliott. I'm thinking of the other one. This one, of course, we just had her on last week. The new Legacy flyweight champion, Andrea KGB Lee. So we have some of those to give away as well. And we also have UFC fighter James Krause, some autograph photos as well. And many more prizes yet to be shown because I don't want to give them all away here. But that's just to entice you there to sign up and like the page. And once we get to 450, we'll start a contest for Beyond the Cage to give those away. So, of course, completely free to sign up and enter. Just got to be 18 years old and have a valid U.S. mailing address. If you're international, maybe we'll talk here and we'll get something going there because shipping can be a lot. We'll work that out, but I don't want to. I would say sign up and we'll see what happens. No, we'll get it shipped to you wherever you live. We're just kidding. We love everyone that listens to Beyond the Cage, wherever you're at. All right, let's get to before we get to our categories here. Just kind of we'll sum up here what we thought 2015 was in MMA because, of course, you could almost say it started in November when the UFC decided to, for the first time ever, announce their whole schedule in advance, not necessarily where they were going, but where all the how many events, over 50 events this year for the UFC, making it the most they've ever done in 1 year. Of course, we had the first full year of Bellator under Scott Coker, the former Strikeforce boss. World Series of Fighting's kind of mixed in there. They had a couple of good fighters. Of course, Justin Gaethje leading the charge for World Series of Fighting. We had the Japan MMA scene. They're about to come back with Ryzen. Of course, their partnership with Spike TV and kind of co-opting with Bellator. So a lot of crazy things have happened so far there this year in 2015. So what did you guys think of this year? Was this the best year we've seen of MMA? Did it do better than last year, or was it about the same?
This is hands down the best year of all time for MMA. I mean, we have seen everything and then some. The rise and fall of stars. We've seen GOATs retire, Cathal Pendred. It's just we've seen everything. Like when you see the rise of Conor, or you see even like Ronda Rousey and big upsets and everything. I mean, there's nothing this year hasn't had to offer, and it's been absolutely amazing. And some of the best athletes ever. We've seen the sport evolve and grow, and it just keeps getting better. So I can't wait for next year.
Yeah, MMA after 2014, I don't want to say drag, but there's a lot of letdowns on some of the fights. There are lots of injuries. I think there's like 39 of like 55 main events pulled out last year due to injury. This year is definitely a good rebound for not only the UFC, but MMA in general. Scott Coker taking over Bellator did wonderful. He's signing decent names, getting decent fighters going, bring back the tournament. Kimbo Slice, I don't care what he is to anyone else. He's definitely fun to watch. But it's also been good for a lot of the supporting aspects of MMA. Glory has been fun and fascinating to watch. The Eddie Bravo Invitationals that have been going on with Jiu-Jitsu have been entertaining. We got Risen coming up, and then World Series, even though they have technical difficulties, they still have quality talent. So it's been a very good year for casual fans to jump on. So
Now, with so many, just specifically the UFC, because obviously they're the big player in the game, do you think they had too many events this year? Do you think they need more events, maybe a little less? Like you said, Colin, a lot of guys in the UFC pulled out main events. Some fights are maybe main events that wouldn't be normally with the amount of cards they have. Do you think they should keep up with around 50 or maybe scale it back to even 40? I mean, that would still be a lot of events.
Well, so two things on that could go for either side of that. The big one is the number of events and guys getting injured. This year, we did see it happen a lot less. There's a lot of big cards that were not affected by the injury bug. A lot of things were actually just suspensions now from the new USADA drug testing policy. A lot of guys have been caught and popped. Not tons, but a good amount of like who you wouldn't think. But also the safety and quality that the fighters train now, I think, is actually getting taken a lot more serious after last year. And you're seeing a lot of dudes actually only do fight camps for like 6 weeks. I mean, John Jones even said he didn't even train for Gustafsson's fight, and that's insane. So I think a lot of fighters are actually woken up from last year and saw what happened. And I think the amount of events is good for the UFC just because you have backup fighters. It's a lot going on, and it's kind of hard for casual fans if they want to start following every event. But as a hardcore fan, the three of us, I feel like we did it relatively easily, And I mean, I think for a casual fan, they only have to, if they really just want to watch big names, they're only catching 12 cards a year. But I think with the amount of names they have, they're signing way more guys than they are cutting. Usually about every 3 months, they'll cut about 15 fighters. But I looked at the debut list for this year, and it's about 150 names, which was impressive. So,
yeah, with the roster just keep growing, it's hard because on one end, I think it wasn't like a ton too many events, but there's definitely so many to where it's like I'm trying to think if there was less weekends without fight cards, and like you always have to keep up. So it is hard for casual fans. Like he said, kind of us, we love it though. We always have something to look forward to. But I think it's almost going to be impossible for them to scale it back with how big their roster is getting, just how many to keep everyone fighting and everyone active. They almost need that. And I do kind of like it because there's going to be people that trickle in and see those events and get into it. And then the people that are hardcore fans, you get all of it. So I think there are positivities from it. And I think no matter what, it's going to stay at this pace. I don't think there's any way they can go any more because there's only like a few. It's like now it's like every other weekend. Yeah, like you're running out. But I think it's the right amount for what unless they really want to like cut their talent pool and cut it down, this is where they're going to be at from now on.
Now, of course, 2016, just looking forward real quickly, I want to look more at a headline more so than fight. We had some things happen in 2015 that wasn't the full year that I think will really affect 2016. The two big things being the Reebok deal with the UFC. We've only seen it for about 6 months. Of course, Colin already brought up USADA, not only just with the way they're testing for performance-enhancing drugs, but the way they're kind of, no pun intended, cutting down on weight cutting with the ban on the use of IVs. And of course, they just had a weight cutting summit with the ABC, which is the overall governing body for mixed martial arts, the Association of Boxing Commissions, or the American Boxing Commission. And with that, I think those two things are going to be the behind the scenes things that will really affect 2016 and make 2016 a very different year than we've seen in years past for mixed martial arts.
I'm not trying to throw out accusations, but we know in MMA, steroids, performance-enhancing drugs is a huge problem. And I think you're definitely going to see a lot of fighters changing, and you're going to see a lot of fighters that aren't the same. And it's messed up to say it's sad and good at the same time, but there's going to be a lot of people you love that aren't going to be the same, but you're also going to see a lot of guys that have been playing a fair game. And I think it's the whole thing's going to change. Honestly, this drug testing thing, I think a lot of casual fans or maybe people that don't pay attention don't realize how big this is, but it's going to really clean up MMA and change a lot of it.
Yeah, the drug testing is definitely interesting because they do a lot of eyeball testing, which is, I think, it's kind of funny. Sage Northcutt's already been tested like 4 times, I think, which, I mean, reasonably so. But I think the most important thing coming out of that will be coming in the next year will be 2 things. One, Reebok deals are going to be a lot better for some fighters because that thing kind of scales the more fights you have. I feel like a lot of fighters who keep putting in 4 fights a year, that's going to be good for them come the end of next year. A lot of guys are going to be entering new pay brackets. And so it's fun and easy to bash on the Reebok deal. But the biggest issue with it was the pay structure. So hopefully come the end of next year, it starts to level out better than the UFC's intended. Guess what I'm saying?
Well, I was going to say also with the Reebok deal, one thing I hope they do is they got to get a little more creativity. In
Yes,
there.
that was one thing during 189 when Conor
Yeah.
wore green shorts. I was like,
so
holy
cool.
crap, someone wore a different color than black
no,
and white.
it was beautiful.
Oh my
People
goodness.
commented on that they love those shorts. Like,
Yeah.
everyone.
Oh, yeah, I would've bought a pair.
Thing is, it was just green. Like, it wasn't super fancy or like it had checkerboards or something. It was just the fact it was a color.
But
and
then
that pops the eye with something different. I'm not talking about they got to have, some crazy, the Oregon Ducks, a foot of MMA design. But they got to give a guy a couple options, even if it's a blank, even if it's the same template they have now. But this guy goes, I want red, blue, purple, green or something. Like, okay, let him have red, blue, purple, green shorts. Let him have that.
Right. I mean, I like the cleaned up look of Reebok and everything. I like how everything turned out. Everything's a lot sleeker, especially along with the
I don't
new
mind
Reebok.
that for like the jersey, like the
Yeah.
shirt that they wear, and even the warm up, like the basketball warm up. That wants to be generic, fine. But when they're in the cage, they should be able to wear the shorts they want
Even
to
the
wear.
shorts
I think should
too.
be a little bit.
It'll still look a lot clean up and cleaner without all the sponsors and stuff.
Exactly.
If you're just getting solid colors, that's going to look sleek either way. The thing that made it all clunky was all the sponsorships all over.
And the ring octagon still looks like a NASCAR logo, which is really strange. I mean, because the thing is, they print a new one out every event, and it's just like, I understand you have deals going on, especially with Bud Light and things like that. I mean, those are big sponsors that you even see in between fights on
and
pay-per-views.
actually, people don't factor this in, but the UFC is actually losing money from the fighters not having sponsors because there was a fee that the sponsor had to pay the UFC to do that. Now they're not getting that fee.
But that's because they're getting a straight check from Reebok, which is where the fighters lose out.
Supposedly, the money from Reebok is supposed to go all to the fighters. Now, we don't know what was done. Again, UFC is a private company. There could have been another check under the table.
Well,
there's not. You can't see the table, but I'm going under the table that Reebok gave the UFC. We don't know, or they charged more for those in-ring sponsorships to get on the octagon.
This might
offset it.
This might be an unpopular opinion to some people. The UFC's been making decent money, and especially needle movers like Conor McGregor and Rousey. I think the UFC might have actually operated less out of the black this year and spent a bit more money.
Well, they did charge $10 more for pay-per-views.
Yeah, which is like, what the hell? But they did also invest, what was it, $10 million into the drug testing policy. They did,
and they built that new facility.
They're building the new facility, 2 new facilities. They're building a new headquarter and the gym in the same area.
Right, yeah.
So safety for the fighters. I think they're trying to actually invest a lot more in these fighters. And it's only been, like you said, like 6 months. For us to really make a call on it right now, it's hard, but I'm really interested in the next year to see how this turns out because I think it might be good.
For me, it's rough, though. I get it that they're doing those couple things. But I feel like when you see that octagon mat covered, Bud Light probably covered that alone, okay? And none of them sponsors are going towards the fighters at all. That's going all in the UFC's pocket. And that summit, whatever drug testing, I guarantee you Bud Light sponsorship being in the middle of that mat paid for that alone.
All right, well, let's get to some of the categories here, and we talked about the future, talked a little bit about the year overall, so let's get to who we thought was the best here in 2015 in the world of mixed martial arts. We have 8 categories to go over. We'll start first with the Rising Star category, and the Rising Star category is someone who not necessarily has gotten to the UFC specifically, but even Bellator or another organization, or even someone lower level who's kind of shot up in fame, but is still not quite, like a top 10 fighter. And this can be male or female, or it could be however we want to do it here in this category. So I'm going to go first. And I don't know if there's an obvious pick for this one, but to me, I feel like this guy really embodied what the Rising Star War is, and that's Sage Northcutt. This is a guy who made his UFC debut in October. Okay, October. This was just 2 months ago. Wins his first fight in 52 seconds. Books another fight just a few weeks later in Vegas. Wins by submission, both wins. He's now 7-0 as a pro, undefeated. He's 19 years old. This kid was in high school just last year.
2 fights in 2 months. Not even McGregor's doing that.
He's now all of a sudden training with GSP and Roy McDonald in Montreal from his home in Texas. And now all of a sudden he's making $40,000 a fight, and he's only fought twice in the UFC. I'm talking about Super Sage Northcutt. I mean, this is come out of nowhere. I mean, no one saw this, and now he has another fight book. He's going to be fighting at the end of January on UFC on Fox in New Jersey. I don't know if his fight will be on the main card, but I mean, this kid will already have fought 3 times inside of 4 months. I mean, he's going on a Cerrone, Josh Koscheck, Neil Magny-esque pace here, and if he continues to win, like we said, maybe not at 155 with weight cutting restrictions, him getting older, maybe he moves on to another division. But man, I have a very bright future for this kid.
Yeah, Sage Northcutt's a monster. For the rising star here, he does. It's not as much. He doesn't get as much buzz as Sage Northcutt as much as I think he does. But Yair Rodriguez is my pick because this dude comes up, he takes the Ultimate Fighter. And then he gets 2 big wins in the UFC, but not only does he get the wins, he gets some of the most exciting, like he's a whole different thing to watch. But he handles the fights, he dominates, he's good in all aspects. And I think if this guy strings together just a few more wins, you're going to see him in the title picture real quick. I mean, the hype around him, it's getting there, but I think it'll grow a lot more real soon. And just a quick honorable mention, who I was close to but didn't, is Michael Page, man. There's not many people that are funner to watch, and he's been running through Bellator guys this year. But Yair Rodriguez has just been on a big win streak. Is he at 3 wins in the UFC now?
Yep, 3 wins, 2 this year.
3 wins. They're decisions too, but yeah, some of the most exciting fights you're going to watch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Yair. I was really torn on the rising star portion on this one. There's a lot of incredible fighters that debuted this year that I would have just picked. Mine, though, I tried to go for things that might have flown under the radar, cards, fighters, things like that, give us a different twist. This one, I picked Stevie Ray, the Scotsman who came out with power. He's an excellent boxer, and he's got
friend of the show.
And friend of the show. But he's got the entire nation of Scotland. I'm a very Scottish in my family, so I love this guy. But I mean, he's in the lightweight division, which is a great division to be in, especially for him. He fights really entertaining. He's got a huge European market behind him, but the matchups for him in lightweight are incredible, and that's what's going to push him really far, because next year in lightweight is going to be some insane matchups.
And also, he'll be training with Sage Northcutt in Montreal.
That is true.
TriStar quite frequently for his camps as well. So that should be an interesting guy. And yeah, definitely, I would say of the European fighters, he's definitely the biggest rising star now, because Conor is a star now. It was Conor. Gustafson's already established too. That was the two. Now it's Stevie Ray.
Yeah, unfortunately, Gunnar fell off, but we can't all be winners here at SVG. But hey, so power to Stevie Ray.
All right, let's get next to our most improved category. This is kind of the opposite of rising star. Instead of a new guy who's now starting to come into the picture, we're looking for a fighter that has been around for a while, but has now seemed to figure things out, is either on the verge of title contention or maybe just starting to get in the top 10. And a guy for me that I think put it all on display just a few weeks ago to really cap off a very exciting and a very great 2015. A guy who I know he lives in California, but he has some Michigan ties, so that's another reason I picked him as well. And that's a guy known as El Kukui, Tony Ferg, a.k.a. Tony Ferguson. This guy arguably on the cusp of a title shot here with his 8th straight victory inside the UFC. That's very rarely done without getting a title shot. And he's coming off a fight of the night, performance of the night bonus there against Edson Barboza in a great fight. Not to mention the excellent performance he had against Josh Thompson earlier in the year. He also had a tough fight against Danny Castillo in recent memory. And really, besides that blemish a few years ago to Michael Johnson, he has come back strong, and he's such a long and lanky guy in this division with power, tricky submissions. He's starting to get better at his wrestling, not so much using it offensively, but defensively, being able to keep fights up. And he's a guy that could have a very big 2016, and he's my most improved fighter.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. I mean, Tony Ferguson has been on a tear, and I'm the only thing holding him back from a title division really is a title shot is Conor and a little other factor, but he definitely deserves it. For my most improved, I went with Rose Namajunas. I mean, she comes off that tough Ultimate Fighter finale, kind of disappears for a while, gets forgotten, and then just comes back with 2 dominant wins. I mean, she finished both by submission this year,
Mhm.
right? And I mean, I know she went into that Van Zant fight, and I thought her most chance would be off her back or in some striking maybe, but she completely out-grappled her and just she keeps improving everywhere. And I think the future, I mean, in this division, you're always 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot right now. So I think we're going to see a title shot for her in the very soon future.
And also a friend of the show. See, look at all
Also
these great
friend.
fighters we have here
So
on
many
Beyond the
friends.
Cage.
Oh, Tony Ferg, come meet us, man. Now Michigan. Yeah, I know. I agree with both those picks. Those are really excellent picks. I like both of them. I went with Henry Cejudo.
Yeah.
He had a kind of a rough start to the UFC with missing weight, and then he actually went 1-1, I believe, in the beginning last year.
Oh, he's still undefeated. He was able to
I
beat-
think he lost a split decision. I might be wrong. I may be wrong, but I thought he had a rough split that he lost. Maybe it was a uni. Well, let's find out. Yeah, Google right here.
Yep, still I think you're talking about
Oh,
his last fight. He was a split,
Oh,
but he
okay,
got
yeah,
the win
sorry.
over Formiga.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what it was. So yeah, it was. He may not be the most impressive when it comes to improve because a lot of people are like out there going crazy, like Ferguson and Noam Lahunas. But the thing is, Cejudo's in a division where the champ you're fighting against is insanely well-rounded. Demetrius Johnson is arguably like one of the pound-for-pound best fighters out there who hasn't really lost recently, obviously, other than Dom Cruz. But Demetrius Johnson is so well-rounded, and for Cejudo to actually be taking his time to really kind of develop his game well, as from being a gold wrestling Olympic athlete, he's gotten really humble since that rough weight cut, and he's just showing that like he's really smart and he's taking the game seriously, and that's what you need to do when you're about to face a guy like Demetrius Johnson.
Not only that, to kind of add on him, I mean, he basically came in as a raw wrestler, if I'm not wrong. He was just a great wrestler. And now in his last fight, we kind of seen him take a step back and outstrike guys. So he's definitely improving in all sorts of the game and showing he's not just a wrestler anymore.
Yeah, I think he had a little bit of a tear at Golden Gloves, I believe. I don't remember. Yeah. But I've been watching this guy closely. I mean, if anyone's going to beat Johnson now, it's him, unless Johnson moves up, which Johnson ain't going to do. So hopefully he has a good year next year.
All right, let's get to our female fighter of the year. Now, of course, all the other categories could have been female fighters. Of course, Billy did just take Rose Namajunas, but this one's specifically female fighter of the year. And there's probably 2 people that you can kind of go back and forth on as to who you would take female fighter of the year. And I think that's probably where we're going to lie here. I don't think anyone's going to pick somebody too surprising, but for me, and I'll probably go on a limb and probably say Billy. And you can tell, of course, our Facebook headliner picture has been for the past 6 months or so has been Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and that is my pick for female fighter of the year. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 3-0 so far this year, and she was able to get 2 knockout victories over Carla Esparza and Jessica Penne, and of course she had the decision win them over Valerie Raturno. And again, a very active champion. I know she just became the champion fighting Carla, but 3 times in 1 year, defending it twice already. And it looks as though as she may be the next coach of the Ultimate Fighter 23 against Claudia Gadelha, a rematch. Of course, she fought Claudia in December of 2014. So really she fought 4 times in almost a year if you go back, because their last fight being in November. So staying active, staying busy, and just being very impressive. And again, a fighter like a couple of the other ones kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, she had the fight against Gadelha, but that was on the prelims. All of a sudden, she's taking on Carla Esparza, who's coming off, winning the tournament there with the Ultimate Fighter. She was the Invicta champion. She was the #1 girl in that weight class for about 2 or 3 years. A lot of people were not giving Joanna much of a chance, and she comes out and for the first time ever, Carla Esparza looked horrible. I mean, got absolutely dominated, and since then has kind of taken the world by storm. And also, a fun fact, becoming the first European champion since Andrei Arlovski all those years ago. Who would have thought that the next European champion, first of all, would have been from Poland? I think that's a big enough shock as it is. And second of all, that it would have been a female fighter was to do it. the many great ones we've had since Orlowski, and she was the first one to do it. So that is my female fighter of the year.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Joanna. I originally had Holm, but when I really sat through and thought of it, don't get me wrong, Holm deserves every bit of it. I mean, it's really a coin flip between these two for this year, but I think she had a better stylistic matchup, and Holm did that big fight. But Joanna has just came to the UFC, and I mean, especially this year, she has consistently dominated and tore these girls apart. I mean, obviously she hasn't as many as Demetrius, or you can say the division's different, but she's been one of the most dominant champs there is. I mean, she's left people battered, and yeah, I don't know who's going to face her now. I don't know any girl I look at when I look at the division. I just think, yeah, that was a good fight, but when she gets against Joanna, what are you going to do? And I think, like you're saying, just everything being the first European champion forever, she just deserves every bit of it, and she's absolutely amazing.
I'm excited for her and Rose when that happens. Although she is confirmed for Ultimate Fighter now, So my female fighter of the year will definitely be Betch Carrera, because she went from prelim main eventer to main event on a pay-per-view. Jokes aside. Actually, I'm going to go with Holm. Obviously it is a coin flip between the two. No brainer. But I like Holm because I didn't realize she debuted this year. I thought she debuted late last year.
Yeah, it was 184.
Yeah, she did, and not even like 9 events later.
Almost lost to Raquel Bennington.
And that's why I like her as female fighter of the year, because here's the thing about Holm is that she's not she didn't come in like McGregor the way to the belt where she's like knocked out a bunch of straight people and everyone's like, oh dude, this is the fight. She kind of got the chance to fight because Ronda cleared out the top 6.
And she was also undefeated.
It was a marketable fight. They had different matchups stylistically, and Holm came out there. Yeah, even different personalities, which was, I just rewatched that fight actually. And she came out there and just beat the brakes off someone. I don't care who you are. I know stylistically, Holm had what it took to beat Rousey pretty decisively, but I don't think anyone really expected her to come out and just beat her senseless and almost kick her off her throne. So many people turned on Ronda Rousey and just started hating on her because Rousey got so aggressive towards Holm, and now Holm is like, the preacher's daughter. That's what her name implies. It's just she's this little goody girl that people can easily love. Rousey was this hard butt ass, whatever we could swear. I don't know. Sorry. The thing is just she came out. She debuted this year. She had 2 all right fights, which we were like, oh man, she's struggling with people when it comes to submission. She could have been most improved. She looked like, oh man, she might struggle when it comes to submissions. Rousey's gonna walk through her, and she just blew us away. Biggest underdog I think this year that we had. I think margins wise, Vegas odds wise, and she came out and just starched the champ.
And I think one thing just to go on that, and I think this is a credit to Greg Jackson and the rest of her coaches, Michael Winklejohn and Albuquerque, but I think it proves, and I hope we get this mentality of guys and girls not watching tape of their opponent before fights like that stop being a thing, because I'm hoping Ronda watched some film, but Holly had to be in their video. They probably have a video room at Jackson's, I imagine, or somewhere where they would set it up and studied it, because you could tell it was a case of her preparing what to do against Ronda Rousey instead of just preparing for another fight. And I think that was such a huge difference in that fight. And I think hopefully we see more of that, where people actually do watch film. They look stuff up. They know what's going on instead of just worrying about themselves so much, which you got to do. But to me, you do that when you're not preparing for a fight. You worry about yourself. You do certain things and work out. But when you got a fight booked and scheduled and it's time to prepare, you focus on that opponent. You don't worry about anything else in the division. And I think Holly Holm did that to a T, and it's no wonder why she's the UFC champion right now and Ronda Rousey isn't. Yeah,
I think most fighters do it, but this fight, it couldn't be a better example of that. And I think it also showed how important good coaches and game planning can be, because you exactly seen it like you're saying. Holly came out there with a game plan. She knew how to dissect Rousey. Rousey came out like we've seen her the last 5 fights, just thinking she's going to steamroll Holly Holm. And I don't think there was really no all right, she's dangerous with this just any of her striking breakdown, anything. She just went out there trying to steamroll. So it really showed how important game plan and strategy is.
All right, let's get to our event of the year. Obviously, this is the best, not just best main card, not the best one that was shown on TV. I'm talking from top to bottom, from the Facebook fights or the Spike.com fights, all the way up into the big main events, either on pay-per-view or Spike TV or, Fox broadcast television or whatever the case may be, or World Series of Fighting, NBC Sports, just whatever was the best card top to bottom. And I had a couple of cards I was considering. I almost went with UFC Fight Night New Orleans, which had 9 finishes out of 11 fights, capped off by the huge knockout there, Dan Henderson against Tim Boesch, not to mention almost considered it for Fight of the Year as Thiago Tavares took on Brian Ortega. I almost picked that one. So that was my almost picked it, but I decided to go Bellator Dynamite just for what it did, bringing in 2 different organizations like that. And really, to me, the only bad fight they showed on the TV card was the Josh Thompson fight. But I thought, other than that, I thought the kickboxing matches were great. I thought, Phil Davis finished like 2 guys. That was fun. King Mo, I thought was solid. Of course, the main event, great submission there by Liam McGarry. I just thought the presentation was great. They had the stage, flames. They had the Pride announcer lady. I just thought it was very well run. Unfortunately, it aired on Saturday with college football, so a lot of people didn't tune into it. But I thought it was a solid event, and I like that from Bellator. Some of the other sideshow stuff, maybe not as much, but I thought this was a very solid event, and that's why I'm going my event of the year.
Yeah, I went with, most recent 194, and there was a lot of factors I had in this. The main 2, obviously, was almost just the impact of this card. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a card with 2, you could say, dominant champs. I mean, Weidman ran through a lot of guys. He was a dominant champ. We all know all those resume. And just the complete turning of the page. I mean, it changed everything, and it really made us look for a different future next year and everything. But also, from top to bottom, stylistically, this card going in just had some of the best matchups. I mean, we watched Jacare Romero. Some people kind of dog that fight, but I mean, those 2, it's the perfect matchup. And just from top to bottom, we were breaking that down. Every single fight on there was very interesting, very well matched. They could have all been coin flips. And at the end of the day, we got, in the main and co-main, crazy finishes that really everyone are talking about still. So that card absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, I have to agree. 194 is a personal favorite of mine from the year. I'm torn between like a couple. I'm not going to list all of them off. I can go into detail on them. It's Dynamite, obviously, as a fan favorite. I mean, that's a classic. I mean, it was a good night of fights. If you just want to chill and get a pizza, watch some fights, but watch some different styles of fights. I think that was really good for some really diehard fans. On my paper, I have UFC Fight Pass Adelaide with Mark Hunt and Mitch Miocic, which was just a crazy night of I think 10 finishes or something. Rob Whitaker got his KO. Miocic beat the brakes off Hunt, unfortunately. It was a good card with not a ton of star power on it. And that's why I'm going with this one. Is that or 189? But 189 obviously was going to deliver no matter what, and it did. But this card, it's my card of the year just because no one expected it to do so well. It was a Fight Pass card. It is one of their first events back to Australia this year, and it did really well. It was. I remember watching this card and sitting there like, holy crud, this is such a good free card. Well, free for me because I have Fight Pass.
Of course, friend of the show, Sam Alvey, had a big knockout on
That's
the
what
card.
I'm saying. Sam Alvey over there making me smile. But I mean, if you look at the list of fighters, I mean, there's names that if you watch, you know who these guys are. There's a lot of dudes from the Ultimate Fighter. There's Ben Wynn on there and on MMA subreddit, fan favorite. Beck Rawlings and Lisa Ellis, which was an interesting fight. A lot of people were waiting for that one. Kyle Noak, who's just been impressive this year. He could have arguably been my most improved fighter too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a decent card for something that just kind of snuck up on you out of nowhere. So,
all right, let's get to our submission of the year. And I'm not just saying this because we've had him on the show twice, and Billy and I saw him in person. When I was looking for submission here. I was thinking, what was a submission that somebody pulled that was something we hadn't seen before, or something that was crazy, not necessarily something that may have been a big moment. And it's our friend of the show, the Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling. Not only did he beat the 6th-ranked guy at the time, Intaki Mizugaki, pulling an upset, but he did so with an arm triangle choke from the bottom, which at least in the UFC, I have never seen before. And I've seen a lot of fights covering this sport in about 7-8 years here, and I've never seen anything like that. And to do it, like I said, upset, big opponent, a stage like that for a young guy like Aljamain Sterling to pull that off against a veteran like Mizugaki, I think was awfully impressive. And we already, the year previously, of course, we had Liam McGarry with the inverted, triangle crazy thing that he did there. And I was kind of looking for something like that. And to me, that finish there by Aljamain embodied what I look for in the submission of the year. And that was my pick here for 2015.
Yeah, originally that's sort of what I was looking at. Like that I've never seen in previous years. I mean, we had Korean Zombie pull the twister off. We had Ben Saunders do the omoplata.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This year, I went a little more with impact, and it was Verdum sub over Cain Velasquez, only because I feel like going into that fight, a lot of people thought Cain was going to kind of run through it, and we all know how dangerous Verdum is, but it's more just pulling it off in that dominant fashion in the win over that fight. It was just absolutely huge. I didn't really expect it as much, but it's just, I don't know, it really stirred it up because Cain Velasquez in that heavyweight division, it's been a weird time, but Verdum did what we expected, and he couldn't have done it at a better moment.
I like that one a lot actually, because Verdum, he's got some crazy submission wins. I mean, he's sub Fedor, he's sub Cain. I mean, other than Frank Mir, he's probably got the best heavyweight jiu-jitsu that we will probably see in MMA.
Yeah, it's just when I'm going to cut you off, but in like the top level, it's obviously harder and harder to finish guys, and I feel like we see less and less submissions, especially even something as simple as a guillotine. And to pull it off in these big fights and the title fight is always impressive for me.
Definitely. Mine, I actually went with a nice main event pay-per-view that I think flew under the radar, and that was Demetrius Johnson and Horiguchi.
Mm-hmm.
Horiguchi was touted as a nice powerhouse coming into this fight, very strong. I think it was a right hand. And people were thinking, not that as an even fight, but that is still a big enough threat to Demetrius if he didn't take it serious. And it was a good fight. But then at the very final second of the final round, Demetrius, he took the arm and he finished him with 1 second left. 1 second left. And I like that one just because I think Demetrius needs to get a lot more credit. He's out there always to just win and brawl, but he's patient to wait for when the opportunity presents it, and he's just not going to coast. He could have sat on Horiguchi's back for that last second, and he still would have won the fight, 50, 40, 45. But he's still trying to finish no matter what. He hears those 10 seconds. He's like, I'm just going to go for it because it's there. It was incredible. I mean, no one's going to beat that finish now for our last minute.
Well, he can.
Unless they try after the bell or whatever,
Husmar Polaris might have a chance.
I mean, there's a lot of really incredible noteworthy submissions, but that one right there, I just feel like it's significant because this is a champ that's really he's kind of like the flagstaff for these really light divisions right now. I mean, when you look at anyone 135 and under for women and men, this guy right now, he's the most dominant for these lighter fighters, and he's just out there finishing dudes. So that's mine.
All right, let's get to knockout of the year. Of course, we've had quite a few big ones here in the last couple of months, and just knockouts are always fun to see. That's what most people are looking to see. So that's why it's very hard in this category to pick one. You can go a couple different ways. I didn't go with this one, but real quick, I'm going with a shout out to Cato over Joe Schilling. I think that was
taking my pick here.
Almost did, but I didn't. I'm gonna save my pick. I'll go to Colin first for his pick on knockout of the year.
Oh, there you go. Well, you went to me, so it seems more like you. Well, I have three. But I don't want to go into depth all of them because these are. I think they're vital three, and honestly, I can't pick one. I'm just going to summarize the three very quick. I don't think any of you guys actually have the other ones, except I think Jim. I'm not sure. But being said, first one real fast, Pitbull, Danny Whiteshell. Insane, only because Pitbull was losing the end of that round. Is looking pretty decent. That division over there in Bellator is kind of crazy right now. And then he comes back in the second round and just starches him with a counter. It was insane. I remember getting calls for Billy on that one. Another one that was a personal favorite was a TKO, Crow Cop and Gonzaga. Just because Gonzaga had that incredible knockout of the year on Crow Cop, in Gonzaga's earlier fight where he head kicked him. But then Crow Cop came out with these vicious elbows and butchered him like Frankenstein. But if I had to absolutely 100% settle on one, put my money on it, this is what it was. Frankie Edgar knocking out Chad Mendez. Only because I think so many folks wrote off Frankie's power. And I'm a diehard Frankie fan. I thought he was going to win the fight. And I thought it was going to be a decision, though. He had better cardio. It was going to be an awesome fight. But he either would have went to a decision or a TKO late in the fight and everything. But he countered with a left. It wasn't even a counter. It's just a left hook. Just right, crisp, clean, out cold on Mendez. First 2 minutes of the fight. Done.
You going to me now? Here?
Yeah, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I mean, for that, just to touch on that Edgar one, not only that, but to really put a stamp on it and need that title shot, he had to do that. And he went out there and did it. Absolutely, all props to Frankie Edgar. That was nasty. For me, Jim kind of touched on it. I had to pick Cato. I mean, if there's any way I pictured Joe Schilling losing this fight, never in a million years I think it'd be on the feet and in that fashion. I mean, Joe Schilling is probably one of the best strikers in MMA because he's just a pure striker. He's the best pure kickboxer in the world.
Definitely the best American kickboxer in the world. Yeah,
for sure, by far. And it's just, I mean, I know there's differences coming over MMA and kickboxing, but I didn't expect it. He had a huge knockout the fight before this over Manhoof. I think it was the one right before.
Yep.
Maybe he had one
Melvin.
in between.
Yep.
And this was just nobody expected. No one really knew Cato was. And he comes on over and gets not only just a knockout, but just brutal fashion. So absolute props to him. And he went on to get knocked out by Manhoof. It's a funny world.
Yeah, and shout out, speaking of a guy who beat Joe Schilling, Calvallo, I almost considered his body kick knockout of Brandon Halsey was also, I think you can make a case for him too as well. But that's another one that I considered. But all right, now we're getting to the big categories here. Those were the previous 6 were fun to end, but these are the big 2. These, this is like when the Oscars, this is your best actor and best actress, best movie. These are the ones people are looking for here. So we're going with Fight of the Year.
Jim, you never gave your full pick right there.
Fight of the Year. I'm skipping it.
Oh, no?
No, I'm kidding. I'm so excited about Fight of the Year. I skipped it, Billy. But I'm going with Holly Holm against Ronda Rousey. Not only was it a spectacular finish, it's also the other way you go on like these categories with submission and knockout is the impact. And the impact her knockout had is being felt across all regions of MMA. This is one of the knockouts that you hear people come up to us being MMA fans that we know don't watch MMA. And they're coming up to us, did you see that? Did you see that? And that's how you know it was a culture-changing event. When we get people we know don't watch or really any sports, let alone fighting, and they're talking to us like, "Yeah, I saw that." They're trying to converse with us, and that was Holm Rousey. Yeah. That's what that was. Definitely. And we can talk about it. We already talked about her game plan and stuff, but if she would have just went out there and outpointed her for 25 minutes, it's like, well, she got the victory. She proved she was a better striker, but she didn't get the finish. It wasn't definitive. People wouldn't have been talking about as much. But, she put the icing on the cake with that head kick.
Definitely. I just want to do a quick honorable mention to Conor McGregor knocking out Jose Aldo.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will. That one will be up there as well. And that's the thing. Like we want to try to pick some different ones.
To touch on the Holm thing too. I mean, we talk about impact and knocking out Rousey, and you said she could have outpointed her, but in women's MMA at all, in the UFC, how many clean knockouts have we seen at all? Maybe 2. I mean, I think maybe Nunes got one.
It's funny because it was the one right before Betch Correia against Ronda, and then Nunes has done it.
Even that, I don't think she's been as clean out there, more TKOs, but Betch Correia and Ronda Rousey are the only 2 I think that have went out cold in the UFC. And I mean, just who she did it to, how she did it, everything. It was the perfect storm for Holly Holm. I mean, absolutely amazing.
All right, I already talked about Fight of the Year. I already built it up. went a couple different ways. Like I already mentioned, Thiago Tavares, Brian Ortega was I almost thought about picking it because I wasn't sure how many people would remember that fight, and obviously not huge names involved. It's very close to picking that. Then I was very close to picking Gustafson against Daniel Cormier at 192, but I decided on Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald 2 at UFC 189. And I think the reason is because it kind of reminded me of maybe Stairway to Heaven or Inner Sandman by Metallica, where it starts off slow, but it's build. Both those songs are building in this fight. Build the first round. If you just look at that first round, and if it wasn't a pay-per-view and you had the ability to change channels because you didn't pay $60 for it, you probably would have went, you might have changed the channel on it. To be honest, I think a lot of people might have changed the channel. But as this fight went on, both guys found the rhythm. They were landing combinations. They were going toe-to-toe. Their faces were bloody. Rory McDonald gets a concussion, breaks his nose, breaks his foot. I think Robbie had some mild concussion-like syndromes after that. He had bad cuts on his lip. And then, of course, just the way it went down, not so much a huge overblow, but just a crumpling of Rory McDonald for Robbie Lawler to defend his title for the first time. And you can't, it started off slow, but it finished great. And to me, that embodied mixed martial arts, just two guys battling and just who's gonna be able to stand at the end. And that to me embodied why I got into covering the sport.
100%. I mean, we talk about not only get out there and brawl, but it wasn't like it was absolute war, but it was never like sloppy where they were just swinging. It was technical, like you're saying, exactly martial arts, and they really went after it. And then all the other factors, like if Lawler didn't get that stoppage, McDonald was winning on the scorecard. So there's so many things that went how amazing that fight is. For me, this was partially with my heart because I'll start with Andrei Arlovski versus Travis Brown. To start, when this fight happened, Arlovski comes back. Already people are laughing, like, why is he still back? Why is he in the UFC? That's whatever. Then his first fight back in the UFC is Brendan Schaub, which most of you forgot that fight happened or hope you did. It was one of the worst. I mean, the decision was weird. I don't even know if Arlovski won. Schaub's face, it was all messed up. And then he gets Brown, and everyone's like, all right, they're kind of just throwing the wolves here. This fight's absolutely nothing. And they go on, and he puts on his striking looks like it did 10 years ago. And it was back and forth. There was one point where Brown rocks him. He goes down, and he gets up, and he finally gets the finish. I was out of my seat this whole fight.
Another guy that you could have picked most improved. And another guy, we talked about Jackson Winklejohn. He moved to Jackson Winklejohn, and now all of a sudden his career is rejuvenated and has a chance to become a second-time heavyweight champion. And it's very hard to be a champion the second time. It's rarely been done in any organization, but specifically the UFC. It's hard to get that belt back after losing it.
And I think if he could do that after 10 years, that'll be one of the best feats in like sports history,
and a feat that could possibly never be done again.
It's like the whole sport has evolved so much. Those guys can't keep up, and if he could come back and do that again, absolutely amazing.
I agree. Arlovski Brown was it was one of the better first round fights I've actually ever seen. And those heavyweights, for some reason, they do some crazy stuff. Made me think of Pat Barry and Jack Congo.
Mm-hmm.
My fight of the year is just really hard pick. I personally went with Ferguson Barboza. There was a lot of good choices. But Ferguson Barboza was just something that was bound to happen. It's in this stacked lightweight division where if you're going down on one loss, someone up is coming up on 8 wins. And hey, this is what it happened to be. Barboza is one of those guys who he's really good at keeping range. And even if he took a loss, he's good at staying in the top. And he's really just so crisp when it comes to striking. It's insane. He's one of the nastiest fighters. He's so insanely quick. You got to praise Barboza for this. But Ferguson is a nomad, and I mean that as in he just travels from gym to gym, training whatever he needs to brush up on, and just he's so well-rounded, and he's become such an insane fighter. And to come out there exactly how this fight would have went, just a bloody brawl and just put it on to Barboza and end up getting the finish. I mean, Ferguson is one of the nastiest dudes I've ever seen in lightweight, probably. When I start actually really thinking about it, this guy, he was and he made waves on The Ultimate Fighter, but nothing like, oh, this is Uriah Hall coming. And then this guy comes out and just gets win. And then it concludes his year with this insane fight that everyone was waiting to happen. And everyone's like, oh, anytime someone fights Barboza, it's fight of the year candidate. And usually it'll end early, Cerrone Barboza, things like that. Something might kind of pull it early. He's like, oh, it was a good fight. But for once, our Barboza fight actually turned into something that we wanted it to be, and it was against Ferguson. And it was just something, it kind of flew under the radar just because it's right in the middle of a really busy weekend. And it's only the third fight in on a certain card that wasn't on, main television. Or was that the Fox one? It was.
That was on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, it was the Ultimate
Fox
Fighter
Sports
one. Yeah, so it was the Fox one. Yeah, it's a tough, time slot to be in on a Friday night in the middle of these cards, and probably the baddest fight that would have happened this year happened. So that's my pick. That's hands down. So,
all right, let's get to our last category of the year, and that's Fighter of the Year, the big one, the granddaddy of them all. And I think I guess every category you can go a couple different ways. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but sometimes there's an obvious choice, and sometimes the obvious choice is the best choice. And I think that's the case for me in this one, and that's picking the notorious Conor McGregor. It's my Fighter of the Year, 3-0 this year, 3 knockouts, only one of them going into the second round, or 2 of them going into the second round. But just the way this guy has taken mixed martial arts and the UFC by storm, coming from a plumber's assistant in Ireland and just working and scrapping his way up to, fighting on undercards and then eventually headlining a Fight Pass card to now being the biggest pay-per-view draw. You can make a case since Brock Lesnar.
I think so.
It's incredible what this guy's been able to do. To me, realistically, since September of last year, taking on Dustin Poirier. So I would say in these last, 16 months, it's incredible how he has changed the landscape of the sport. And it's no denying that with the fall of Ronda Rousey, he is now he's the guy on the win streak. He's the guy, and you can make a case he's the face of the company, so to speak. And he capped it off with arguably the greatest championship performance of all time, one that may not ever be replicated. Not only winning in 13 seconds, but beating a guy who hadn't lost in a decade since losing his first or fifth fight in MMA, and that being Jose Aldo, arguably the biggest card of the year. So for me, it's the notorious one.
Yeah, I think this one's probably going to go across the board, so I'll just tell you how much I love Conor McGregor. But, I'm almost out of words for explaining what he's done and just how it all is. I was just watching a video this morning of might have been 2 years ago. I think this all was 3 years ago, but he was out for a year with ACL. And he's talking about not even having a car at the moment, just wanted to buy some shoes and a car. And now look where he's at. He is definitely the face of the company. Just everything he's done, he's talked and he's talked and he's talked, but he's backed it up and he said it. And you can just, everything he's done from the marketing side. This dude's been on 4 world tours, just basically putting his face out there. Then in the fights, there has not been a more impressive fighter. I think he's honestly changing the whole game of striking. People are now looking at him and how he looks at it, how he trains, all this new stuff he implements. It's absolutely amazing. And then it's not like he had no easy run. This is one of the toughest divisions. The belt's not changing hands between a bunch of guys. You got a champ who's had the belt for a decade, and he puts on the most, like you said, probably impressive performance ever. You can't get cleaner than that. It's a flawless victory. And then the fight before, he can't fight a wrestler. Well, he fights one of the best wrestlers, holds it out, knocks him out. There's nothing more this guy could have done better. The only thing we can all pray is that this isn't the Machida era all over again, and this is the real deal, and it lasts a while. So I think Conor McGregor's in the long run. Absolutely amazing what he's done.
Yeah, no, just thinking about the other weekend actually makes my heart still kind of jump to my throat. I probably watched that fight about 100 times now. So many times, just it replays my head pretty hard because it's only 13 seconds, so it's burnt there forever. I remember when he just first debuted, and I watched that Marcus Brimage fight, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is going to be fun. This is interesting. You know, another guy. All right, you know, everyone's enjoying it. And then when he beat Holloway, you know, to a decision. I know some people said, okay, wow, this guy's tough, but you know, he's not out there knocking fools out anymore or anything. You know, he's probably hitting that one tear that some fighters get when they hit the UFC. They hit that moment. It's like, oh, see, this is what happens when you get against high caliber. You just not, you know, you kind of flutter. And then he went and got the event in Ireland. And I remember sitting there watching this by myself. And he came out to that Sinead O'Connor song, and it sent chills down my spine. This is, I think, the first time I actually like was so moved by a fighter walking out to the octagon, and he just came out there calm, and he carried his entire nation on his back, and just clinically ran through Diego Brandao. And I immediately remember picking up my phone and calling Billy Jack, and I'm like, dude, this kid is the real deal. And I remember Billy's like, dude, are you serious? And I'm like, this guy is doing something. And then we immediately just jumped on that train, and we're like, we're riding this all the way. And you have to agree that this dude is carrying the UFC on his back right now. He's if he would have injured out this year at all and not have fought, that would have derailed a lot of the hype onto him and everything. Like if he took another year out for an ACL and then Rousey lost, the UFC would be having a tough time right now.
And not to mention the John Jones.
Exactly. With John Jones, you know, that's three of you big fighters. But the thing is, like, if Jose Aldo injured out of 189 and the card increased in sales from their tickets and everything the week of when Mendez got in and everything, they actually still sold more tickets. You know, that's the thing. And a lot of people got even more excited. Not that Jose Aldo's a star, but still, Mendez is a great fill-in. If McGregor injured out and Mendez filled in against Aldo, that card would have not done nearly what it did, I think. It still is a great card, but Conor McGregor, he's charismatic. He knows the right things to say. And it was honestly one of the better moments of my life. I've watched my daughter be born in front of my eyes this year. All right. And I think I was just as happy to watch Conor McGregor win the title. All right. I shattered my phone watching Conor McGregor win the title. I didn't do that when my daughter was born. All right.
This is a true story for people who think he did. We were all watching the fight together, and this is a 100% straight fact that on Beyond the Cage, we don't do that. You know, we don't do satire. We don't make stuff up. He legitimately had his phone in his hand. I don't know if you knew you had your phone in your hand or you were just throwing your fist and it let go, but yeah, that phone hit the floor.
Cost
and
$130 to replace.
Yeah, you wasted a lot of hours of
I picked up some shit for that
labor's
one.
there in Taiwan.
I mean, what went through my head is, I mean, I grabbed my phone, and what the most satisfying thing for me is, and I'm a jerk for this kind of stuff, is I wanted to go see all the haters' reactions, all the people who thought this hype train was going to just get his front lead leg beat off by Jose Aldo, and the fact that he starched him. I wanted to get on my phone and just look at the reactions on the internet. And instead I said, forget it. And I shattered my phone and I just reveled in the moment. It's probably one of the happiest moments of my life. I'm not going to lie. I watched a dude start in the UFC, achieve his dreams, become one of the most influential sports figures alive right now, combat sports lives at least. I mean, when I compare Tyson and him and Muhammad Ali and stuff, I don't mean it in the sense of like talent and things and stuff that's disrespectful to Tyson. He's still great. He's predicting these things. But I mean, the sheer ability to move people and to move numbers and what Dana likes to call a needle mover. And he actually full throttles that right now. And he's making things happen. I mean, what was it? 10 million for that pay-per-view that happened over the past weekend? Yeah, the gate. Who knows what those numbers are going to be like?
I will say too, man, it's like, first off, comparisons to those guys, people say, oh, that's outrageous, but I think he's a few fights away from it. I mean, right now, I think he's the face of combat sports. And not only that, I think he's bigger than the UFC right now. And I've heard people touch on this, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, we're talking about all their stars are fading. John Jones' name is tampered. Ronda Rousey, I mean, they're going to sell that rematch, but after that, people aren't going to tune into home Tate like as much. Conor literally has the UFC in his hands right now. He can, if he asks for anything he wants, it's his. He's the face of combat sports. I mean, what boxer even right now? I mean, Mayweather's retired. There's no one else.
I mean, Klitschko lost.
Yeah, Tyson Fury, this guy. Yeah, Conor McGregor. Cathal, rest in peace. No, Conor McGregor definitely made this a really interesting year to be a fan. I mean, and he just did the unbelievable. I mean, if you looked at the last episode before the 194, I did pick Jose Aldo to win because I'm going to be honest with it, and I'm not going to sit here and try and front. I picked Jose Aldo only because I thought that it just, when it came down to it, after watching what Mendez put him on his back, I was worried that it has to end at some point. There's just no way this fairy tale could be this good for me. I thought I was going to wake up, and I figured Jose Aldo would have been me waking up. And thankfully, it's not. I'm still going full force. 2016 World Title Tour. We're going to unify lightweight and featherweight. 20 mil contracts. We're going to get toasting of some fine whiskey. I'm going to buy myself a bottle. This guy is going to retire undefeated. Probably the richest UFC athlete.
Well,
alive.
he may retire undefeated in the UFC.
Undefeated. I mean, in the UFC, right. The richest athlete the UFC's probably seen, and I think a decade's time from now, we could probably say he's probably the most important fighter of this decade because I think he's changing the sport.
All right, well, that is our award show here for 2015.
I think we forgot a category.
We forgot a category? What category did we forget, Billy?
The good guy category for Colin.
Oh, okay.
We need a list.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to write that down. Yeah. It must have slipped my mind.
Colin, can you just enlighten us on who's just the goodest guy in the UFC? Just a good dude.
Look, all right. From one father to another. All right. Let me preface that I did walk around work saying Luke Rockhold was the better, well-rounded fighter, and he's going to beat the crap out of Weidman. Being said, after watching UFC Embedded and the way Weidman interacted with his kids, all right, it pulled at my heart a little, and I thought there's no way he can lose because he's a dad. I mean, look at Emmanuel Newton, but I guess I forgot that Emmanuel Newton did lose.
Yes, he lost.
And I eat my words and picking Chris Weidman as the good guy to win. There's only one good guy who will ever win, and he's still the champ right now. That's Chael P. Sonnen. All right.
Did you hear his commentary on World Series of Fighting this past weekend?
Very good stuff.
I love Chael Sonnen.
It's pretty good. All right, we got the good. Do we have the bad guy category? Is Chael Sonnen still in the running?
Yeah, he wins that every year. He wins it.
Crap. But I mean, I still love him.
If Chael Sonnen don't get it, I give it to Ben Askren just because we've never brought his name up. I feel like he just needs his name brought up once in a while.
Yeah, I got to give it to Henenbarrow's smile. So,
or is John Jones the bad guy of the year?
John Jones is good. Don't you know, man? One day in rehab is all it took for him to get better.
It took him one day to realize that he wanted to rent a car and hit a lady.
Can I change?
Pregnant lady.
Can I change my KO of the year of that bathtub that Henenbarrow got slumped by?
That carried over this year.
Oh,
could Dillashaw also be voted as bad guy of the year?
No, Dillashaw. Well, I guess in the Bible the snake was evil. So I mean, let's be real here.
Honest, did Dillashaw have both fights this year with Brower? It was only one.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that. No, we're getting on tangents here.
Dillashaw. All right.
We didn't bring up his name enough. Honorable mention to Dillashaw. What a great year for him.
You can make a case fighter of the year for him as well. All right, he is Colin Camper and Billy Brant. I am Jim Gramm. Thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage, and thank you for supporting us here in 2015, our biggest and best year of Beyond the Cage. So you hope to continue watching the program in 2016. Of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. Of course, as mentioned earlier, like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. Hold up on the phones. We've got some great stuff to give away here. I mean, Andre KGB Lee, where else are you going to get that autograph? Where else are you going to get that? She even put KGB with the cane and sickle on the G. So that's pretty fancy. So like our Facebook page, and thank you to all the friends that support us, MMA Signatures, MMA Insider, MMA for Life, MMA Freak. Of course, all the great fighters we've had on. I mean, that's why it's been such a big year. The amount of fighters we had, main eventers like Luis Smolka and Rose Namajunas. We're going to have a great year coming up as well. Of course, like I mentioned, Stevie Ray, Aljamain Sterling, Jessica I, to name a few as well. Big time fighters we've had on. Joe Schilling we've had on as well. So it's been a big year and looking forward to it. So for 2015, this is it. We will do our next show. Will be unofficially, however you want to look at it, our last show of the year as we pick the fights for UFC 195. But we celebrated the best year in 2015 here on Beyond the Cage. So for Billy and Colin, I am Jim Gramm, and thank you for listening to Beyond the Cage.